On the night of St. Patrick's Day, I stayed in. I was in bed and just couldn't sleep. I tossed and turned for what must have been hours. I kept drifting on and off, but then, suddenly, a searing pain ripped through my arm. I shot up and clutched the wound, a deep gash running down the length of my forearm. I looked up and saw my door wide open. Loud footsteps were banging down the hall, like something was running away. Someone had to be in my house. I reached for my phone to call the police, but it wasn't connected to the charger. It was gone. They must have taken it. It was at that very same moment I realized nobody was supposed to be home that night. I couldn't just sit in bed and wait to bleed out, or for whoever broke in to come back. I had to get up and do something about it. I stood up, nearly falling over. I turned my attention to the open door. I couldn't hear the footsteps anymore, but that didn't mean they were far. Quietly, I crept over and stopped just before going through, slowly leaning over to peek my head out into the hall. It was dark, though it seemed empty. But then, I heard this tortured sound. It was distant, but still in the house. The basement. It had to be. But what the hell was it? It was half like a dying animal roaring in pain and half like a person screaming. In spite of my fear, I forced myself out of the room, then carefully made my way downstairs. I started to walk to the front door, but I saw something out of the corner of my eye. The door to the basement was open. A light down there was flickering on for just fractions of a second at a time, blinking spastically. I walked to it, found the switch, and tried to turn it off, but nothing changed. The light kept on flickering. And down there, somewhere, was a quiet voice. I couldn't tell if it was crying, laughing, or whimpering, but it sounded scared. And then a thought hit me. It could be someone in my family. They could have come home early and got attacked. There was a good chance they were worse off than me. I had to go and check on them. And when I reached the bottom, I saw them. They weren't a burglar or a family member. They were something else. In the middle of the basement floor, facing away from me under the flickering light, was something I could only describe as a leprechaun. I stood there in shock. I blinked, rubbed my eyes, pinched myself, but it was still there. It looked small but not harmless, like a human, but far from healthy. Without a good look at its face, I couldn't be sure of anything. Hello? What are you doing down here? What are you... It turned to look at me over its shoulder. That thing couldn't be human. Not a chance. I felt skewered by its eyes, unable to move or speak. I couldn't even look away as it began to grow. It didn't happen naturally. The bones and flesh of this creature broke and stretched over itself again and again as it grew to match my size. It turned its body to face me directly, beginning to tower over me. It never fully stood up, but hung from one hand gripping the rafters, then reached out to me with the other. The hand wrapped around me and drew me in closer, as its jaw began to smile and unhinge itself, making room for me to fit in. I couldn't close my eyes, scream, or fight. I was completely paralyzed. The inside of its mouth with jagged teeth was the last thing I saw, right before I felt it pulsating and pushing me down with wet, rotting flesh, piercing and tearing into every inch of my body. For a brief moment, I thought I reached the bottom of the leprechaun's stomach and found it to be the same as my bedroom, like I was already in hell and doomed to repeat this over and over. But no, it couldn't be. It was just a dream, the most awful, agonizing, and haunting dream of my life. And yet, when I looked down at my arm, it wasn't bleeding anymore, but there was a mark in the same spot, a scar in the same shape as the wound. Nothing like that had ever been there before. The dream wasn't entirely unreal. Some of it had to have come with me into the real world. I didn't know what to make of it. I spoke to my neighbors about it later, expecting them to call me crazy or overdramatic, but their reaction was quite the opposite. Everyone I talked to claimed to have seen a leprechaun in the area. Some claimed it was as whimsical and harmless as you could imagine, but others shared a story similar to mine, and many encounters in between blurred the lines of what this thing could be. I don't know if it's good or evil, but I know I'm not crazy, and I know that wasn't a dream. Every St. Patrick's Day, that night is all I can think about.